Good afternoon. We are breaking into our regular programming as we continue to cover the mass shooting at the St. Francis Hospital campus that happened yesterday. It left 4 innocent victims dead. The gunman killed himself. We expect the mayor of Muskogee to begin speaking any minute now.
Tulsa police today identified yesterday's gunman as 45-year-old Michael Lewis. They say Lewis was a patient of Dr. Preston Phillips, one of the victims killed yesterday. Police say Lewis had called the doctor's office several times after a recent back surgery, complaining of pain, had even seen Dr. Phillips again after the surgery. Police say Lewis bought an AR-15 rifle yesterday, hours before the shooting, and had bought a handgun just a few days before that, a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson, from a pawn shop. Police say they got a call from a woman last night that led them to a home in Muskogee where Lewis used to live. And so that, I believe, is going to be the subject of this news conference with the mayor. We're going to go to him now.
Father, we wish that we were convened under different circumstances, but such as it may be on today, we stand where you would have us to be. Father, as leaders of our community, law enforcement, clergy, and layperson alike, Father, to try to move our community forward. And I ask, oh God, as I ask on Sundays, God, that you will hijack my mouth, Father, that it may not be me, but that I may be governed by your Holy Spirit as we make this presentation to these your people. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. This has been a long week for our country and a trying few days for Middle America that most of us fondly refer to as green country. Our prayers are ongoing for the community of Taft and the family of the young lady who lost her life in a senseless mass shooting over the weekend. I feel more compelled to express sympathy to the family of that young mother, because as I was driving to this place on today, we have several camps for young people that are taking place, and I was reminded of her little girl who will have to go to camp someday on her own with questions in her mind about why her mother is not there with her. And so we are praying more than ever for that family. We have experienced another tragedy in our state, in our neighboring community of Tulsa, Oklahoma. The horrific shootings, which resulted in several deaths, are bone-chilling for Northeast Oklahoma. Many of us who live in the region or who enjoy the freedoms that we have as Oklahomans may have said in times past, when we see shootings in other places, that those things don't happen in places like Oklahoma. Today is a new day. The people of Tulsa who are watching, to the families of the deceased and the staffs at St. Francis Healthcare System, we want you to know that you are in our prayers as well as everyone else. Approximately 1 hour following the active shooter incident in Tulsa, we were notified of a bomb threat here in Muskogee, USA. Fortunately, there was no bomb, and from that incident, our community was left physically unscathed. I will comment about that shortly, but we have to remember that although there was no physical damage, the emotional trauma that people in our community will suffer will be ongoing, and that we are prayerful that our partners with Green Country Behavioral Health Services and other places will work with us as a community to be certain that those people who are traumatized get the help that they need. Active shooter incidents are not limited to East Coast and West Coast or to large urban population areas. The reality of death and violence now plague rural America like never before. As I stated in an interview on yesterday, the time for Congress to act is now. There is no quick fix for gun violence. Otherwise, it would have been fixed by now. Let me say in advance of taking questions at the end of this presentation, I do not have the magic answer for what needs to be done. But we do know that those who have been elected to serve in Congress and those who desire to hold office have to do something to reinstill confidence in Americans that it's okay to go to the hospital and not be worried. It's okay to go to your church and not have to look over your shoulder. It's okay to enjoy summertime and not be worried about whether or not your children will come home. This is not a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or a partisan fix. Mayors across Oklahoma and abroad need support from the U.S. Congress by doing something to address this problem. My appeal, and I'm certain that other mayors across the country agree with me, to Congress is to do something. What that is, we don't know, but that's why we elected you. We sent you to Washington to think on our behalves about problems that we don't have the answers to ourselves. Do something to reinstill confidence in the American public that you are concerned about the well-being of the people you were elected to serve. Do something or step aside and let someone else do your job. Our heartfelt thanks go to those in law enforcement and emergency management in Oklahoma, the county sheriff's office, and the interconnected agencies who have assisted our communities in the last several days. If you look around this place where we stand on today, there are several members of the emergency management, law enforcement, or EMS community present. I want you to know that with all sincerity as the mayor of the city, as well as with the voices of several of our other residents, we are as equally concerned about your health and emotional well-being. You place your lives in harm's way on a daily basis. You have to recover bodies. You have to talk to families. You have to get the blood of others on your hands, on your badge, and on your clothes. We want you to know that we are concerned about your mental health as well, and that as we move forward with proposals to make our community safe, we will also move forward with proposals to help you in your job. Monday, I will be asking Muskogee City Council to grant the interim city manager whatever budget authority is needed to work with our law enforcement agencies to conduct a number of active shooter trainings over the next several weeks. We cannot vote and talk about the crisis. We have to take the necessary action to do what needs to be done. There is no dollar amount that you can place on the training that is needed to keep our people safe. Yes, we will pray. Yes, we will communicate, but we also have to put dollars to programs. We will not be asking for law enforcement to reassign their existing resources, but that we will consider allocating new resources to give our law enforcement community in this area whatever they need to conduct active shooter training on a larger scale so that they can be partners in our community to make our community safe. I have visited with my dear friend at Green Country, Joy Sloan, who leads the Green Country Behavioral Health Services, about providing continued trauma support and counseling to the people of Taft and local residents experiencing trauma and anxiety from the acts of violence that have unfolded over the last several days. It would be selfish for any mayor or municipal official to say that the problem is localized to their city or county boundaries. We have a problem that is spilling over nationwide, and we are grateful that Green Country is here to help us do whatever we can wherever the help is needed. Let me urge our residents not to take this for granted. The direct or indirect emotional impacts you are facing or will face are real. Help is available, and we are encouraging you to take advantage of it. Many of us who were raised in different parts of the country have experienced where sometimes to talk about mental health was a taboo issue. But let me say to all of us that those tools that they provide are real and that they are available to you. Tulsa Police Department is leading the St. Francis active shooter investigation, and they, along with other agencies, are vetting any related details. So today I will not be speaking on their behalf. It is not our place to speak concerning about their investigation. What we do not want to do is impede their efforts by sending out mixed signals or mixed messages. They are capable to do their jobs. They have already solicited assistance when necessary from our law enforcement community, and we are assisting them with their investigation. I'm asking leaders of the clergy community, pastors, religious organizations to schedule and maintain prayer services over the next several days while our respective communities try to heal from the recent acts of violence. I've said this to this community without any begrudgment at all, that as a member of the clergy, I will always stand in the place that God is able. All of our tools are fine, all of our resources are great, but we believe in Muskogee in the power of prayer. So to the clergy community, please help. Please lead these efforts of prayer to unite our community and bring people together. Finally, let us not use this as an opportunity to work against each other. Let us use this as an opportunity to come together as one. That doesn't just go for the community or other leaders. That goes for me as the mayor of this city. That we will not work against ourselves, nor cannibalize ourselves over issues that do not matter. If there is a fight to be had, the fight should be about serving our community. If there is a squabble to take place, the squabble should be about who's doing the most to help, not about who's getting credit for the work being done. The true fabric of a community is proven by how well we are woven together in a crisis. We have seen crisis in our community. We have survived crisis in our community. Crisis seems to be escalating to a point where people believe, where is hope? I challenge you by answering it this way. Hope is in you. Hope is in each and every one of us. When one member of Green Country suffers, all of Green Country suffers. It is never the wrong time to do the right thing. And the right thing is to help our neighbor. You may not have been directly or indirectly impacted by what's going on, but you know someone in this community who has been. Today, as I was leaving my driveway, one of the neighbors came up to me and spoke. We wave at each other every day, either when I'm leaving my home or going home. And she told me her name today. And she said, well, I know who you are. I said, yes, ma'am. We talked for a minute, and I said to her, perhaps the problem in many of our communities is we don't know each other. We're so busy waving and fearful in a post-COVID world that we don't know our neighbors. The gentleman who the Tulsa Police Department have identified lives in my neighborhood, less than 200 feet from my door. This week, I waved at him with no idea or clue as to where we would be standing today. Perhaps if we knew our neighbors and felt their pains and understood their problems, we could be the vessel or the vehicle to proactively cure what might be the inevitable. If there are any questions regarding anything that was stated, I will take them at this time.
Marlon, walk me through your reaction knowing that you said you waved to the man accused of the shooting just a few days walk me through your reaction when you learned that he is, who police are saying is responsible for all of this?
There are no words to describe what you feel when you realize someone who lived less than 200 feet away was responsible for this type of action. To know that your children are in the same neighborhood, playing on the same streets, it's indescribable. It is bone-chilling, so to speak, to know that person was in your community and not knowing what their potential to do violence was. I think all of us go through life so self-absorbed, we don't know what's going on. And so it was very eye-opening to me. Of course, now I want to know my neighbors. I want to know what they're thinking. Not necessarily for my own good, but sometimes for theirs. Because I think through those dialogues, through those community conversations, we can help each other along the way. I don't know if anyone here was raised what I call old school. We knew everybody growing up, and everybody knew us. And while there may have been issues, they weren't to the magnitude that we see now. And so all of that is going through my mind as I think about that. I can't hear you, ma'am.
Did he live there full time? Are you aware if he was a permanent resident there in that home?
I am unaware. I am unaware of that. I do know I waved at him this week. I do not know what his living status was.
Mayor, you called for change from Congress. Are you looking for some sort of gun control? Is that what you're talking about when you speak of this change?
What I'm looking for from Congress is them to do something. They've been debating for a number of years now about things like a universal background check. They've been debating here recently about who should have a weapon or who shouldn't have a weapon. What I'm saying is the time for them to talk is over. We've heard this. We've heard this conversation for 10 years at least. Something needs to happen. Something needs to happen. I think now that these incidents are happening in Middle America, where this doesn't normally happen, should provoke Congress to do something so that the people who are impacted can get the help that they need. And sometimes help is just comfort in knowing they did something. Comfort can be knowing they acted. Now there's all types of levels on the spectrum. One goes too far this way, another goes too far the other way. Some people say what you're doing is not enough. I'm saying do something, because mayors don't have the power to do that.
I guess my question is, if it was gun control, which is something that is not typically supported by Oklahoma lawmakers, would you be okay with that? Would you be in support of that if Congress came down with limiting the sale of who can buy a firearm, how long it is of a background check? Would you be okay with that, even though most lawmakers in Oklahoma probably wouldn't?
What I'm saying today is I want something. And I can't define what that is, because we enjoy in our country Second Amendment freedoms. There's no constitutional wiggle room to say go confiscate a law-abiding citizen's weapon. So what I'm saying to Congress is do something. Don't just tell me things are bad. I tell that to people all the time. Things are bad, but they're going to get better. Things are bad, but they're going to get better. They've got the power of the purse. They've got the power of legislation. And so what I'm saying is do something. Don't just tell us, oh, mayors all across the country, we're with you. No, you're not. You're with me when I have something to work with. Today, all I have to work with is telling my community things are going to get better if we work together. But Congress needs to act. That's what I'm saying.
Waving at your neighbor, you don't know his wife. Can you provide any more information?
I did not know them interpersonally at all, other than good morning, honk the horn. That was it.
They were community members for some time. Do we even have that knowledge?
I have no clue.
Marlon, can you please repeat the questions? We
You want
can't.
me to have to come closer. If I start repeating questions, I'm going to say it wrong.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
You offered, after the Taft shooting, you offered Green Country Living Services, the day after, Monday. Are you offering any sort of services, similar help from Green Country Living to people in your neighborhood on that quiet neighborhood street?
Green Country has told me that they are available to whoever needs the help that needs to be offered at this time. As you could imagine, that street and that area was blocked off for several hours with residents not knowing whether or not a bomb was going to explode in their community. We don't know what a bomb means. It means a different thing to each act. And so for those people to have sat through that type of trauma for that long, they need as much help as anybody else. And so Green Country has made themselves available to help those residents as well.
Mayor Coleman, you said that change needs to happen, but are you pleased with the response you've seen thus far from Washington?
What response?
From the White House, the reaction to the tragedy in Taft and the reaction to what happened, what unfolded at St. Francis yesterday.
We're all reacting now. I don't want a reaction. I want something. I think the people in communities across the country want something tangible. It's like the story of the Good Samaritan. The person that they helped needed more than a reaction. Imagine all of the people who have been traumatized or who have lost loved ones, and we give them reactions. In my mind, when you look at these types of tragedies, a reaction is no stronger than clicking like or love or whatever they do on social media. I mean, people need more than a reaction. We need Congress to give us something tangible, no matter how great or small, so that we can start down the path to fixing our communities.
How do we have a conversation with our children about these tragedies?
I think that we have that conversation through the appropriate counseling services that are made available. I think that one reason why we want to emphasize Green Country so much is that people need to understand the need for their children to get help. Traumatized children who grow into adulthood traumatized become traumatized adults. And when you have a community of traumatized adults, you have traumatized outcomes. And we want to be certain that we work with these children now. Now. I said this, I think maybe Sunday at my church. I asked the congregation, let me see the number of hands of people who are dealing with something now that wasn't resolved in their childhood. And I think the same thing applies today. If we don't help these children now, and that's why I'm making a big deal to parents, don't just say rub Jesus on them, put oil on their head. No, take them to get help. Otherwise, you don't know what the outcome is going to be.
I'm going to add where everybody here. Who's next?
Mayor Coleman, what does the city of Muskogee have planned for the town of Taft? Taft being 7 miles from here. The shooter arrested in Taft was from here. The people of Taft are telling me that they feel neglected. They feel like everybody's turned their back on them. And then with the ordeal on yesterday happening, they really feel behind the power ball, or the power curve, if you will. What can the city of Muskogee do to help our partners and neighbors and family there in Taft, Oklahoma?
I think one of the things that we can do as a neighboring community is partner with their elected body, have the conversation about what resources they may be missing, and also have that conversation with their assigned county representative, those 3 men who serve the county, to be certain that if they are missing resources or if they feel like what they have is inadequate, we need to have those conversations and help them identify what they need to be successful.
I know Tulsa police are obviously handling this investigation, but was law enforcement here familiar with Michael Lewis at all?
I don't know how familiar they were or were not with him. As I said earlier about Tulsa conducting their ongoing investigation, I'm sure that they will have those conversations with our law enforcement community, and as the days go by, they'll be able to give us more information about that individual.
Is there still an investigation ongoing here as to whether there's still a safety threat to the community, or whether police are still looking into connections here? I know you're limited in what you can say, but can you speak to that at all?
From what we know today, in terms of the bomb threat, for example, we believe that that issue has been concluded. We do know that Tulsa Police Department is taking the lead into anything that may have even spiraled out of that, and that they are working closely with our law enforcement, who has been very, very good. And I need to say that today. I think that the book on good law enforcement can be written out of Muskogee, USA, because our law enforcement community, the police department, the county, others in this area have always been not only transparent, but cooperative with other agencies, and they plan to do the same thing with Tulsa Police Department.
One last thing. Were you called at the time of when law enforcement responded to the house?
I was not home. I was not home.
Mayor, do you consider bringing more technology into Muskogee so we can come closer knit as a community? Facebook is not a good place to unite people, but a page, a Muskogee page that has an open forum and maybe a Zoom, a Saturday to talk with the police chief, talk with the school people and teachers so that kids and people can interact with you online without leaving their home, have their coffee in the evening or morning, maybe
We're having cooperative communications, not only just with law enforcement, but also with our school districts, not just the public school district, because we have several private districts here in the city of Muskogee. We're also having conversations with our tribal friends, Creek and Cherokee tribes in particular, about how we expand the conversation. And to your point, what is the one vehicle, technology-wise, that can keep us all updated? Because everyone is not on any one platform, or I guess I should say everyone is not on every platform. Some people are partial to one versus the others. But we are having those conversations in terms of what is that one area, that one way. Is it citywide Wi-Fi? Is it connectivity issues? You know, how do we build that platform? And we are having those conversations.
So we can start to rebuild it correctly and get people socializing again.
To get people socialized, now this is my opinion, we need more than technology. I mean, to get people socialized, we need high fives. We need handshakes. We need fist bumps. We need personal interactions. I was having a conversation today with a friend of mine about the age of the shooters here recently, and that as kids, my age group wouldn't have thought to do that. But that's because we have more social interaction. We weren't just in the house all day with that. We were out on the playground. If there was an issue to be resolved, you fought it out. I mean, worst case scenario with a bottle cap, not with a gun. And so, anyone else?
One last thing, Mayor. We've had a rash of violence here in Muskogee, especially on the west side. What are some of the things that you and the police department and sheriff's department are working to curtail that violence? If you ask the residents here in the city, they'll say it's about 3 to 4 families where most of this stuff comes from. What can you tell the people of Muskogee about what you guys are doing to curb that violence?
One of the things that we know is that our law enforcement community is eager to have the conversation. And here's the problem, and I'm just gonna say it. They can't have the conversation if nobody talks to law enforcement. If there's a mass shooting with bullets everywhere and you say what happened, nobody saw anything. I can't work with that. Law enforcement are not wizards. They don't have a crystal ball that can pry your heart open. And so on the west side of town, or any side of Muskogee, the best way to have those conversations is to have the conversation. Be willing to share. This is what happened. That's what happened. Otherwise, we're going to have the same void in the conversation where nothing gets answered. One more question and we're done.
Mayor, it sounds like they're potentially family members of the suspected shooter of this. Are they safe? Are they being...
Talk up.
It sounds like there's family members in this community of the person accused of doing the shooting. Are they safe? Are they being offered services as well by your city, by your police
I
department?
have no idea. We'd have to have that conversation with the Tulsa Police Department because they're directly engaging with that family. And certainly I wouldn't want to say anything to put that family in danger. Thank you.
You've been listening to a news conference by Muskogee Mayor Marlon Coleman. He led that news conference with a prayer and said it's been a very long week for the country and a very trying few days for eastern Oklahoma. He asked for additional prayers. He also cited the shooting in Taft over Memorial Day weekend, where one woman was killed and 7 others were shot. And he says what happened at St. Francis goes to show that it can happen in Oklahoma, and calls it bone chilling for northeastern Oklahoma.
One thing he also talked about was making sure that on Monday he's going to ask his city council and city manager to make sure that the Muskogee Police Department has all the resources they need to conduct some active shooter training drills in the next few weeks. So back in 2013, I covered a group out of Texas State University who brought a program here to Oklahoma to train law enforcement. It's called ALERT, which stands for Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training, and that means when you get to a scene, you don't wait for a SWAT team, you don't wait, you just go right in. And at that time I did that story, 40 area classes had already been held here. Then a few years later, they created one for civilians. What do citizens need to know if we are involved in an active shooter? And that's called Civilian Response to Active Shooter Events, or CRACE, and it's out of the same group. And Muskogee Police have actually been teaching that class to citizens for free for some time. So it's great that he wants to do more training. That training has been available. It's been made here. And as we talked about yesterday, a lot of the training has changed since Columbine. It's no longer the same. It's drastically changed. And that's what these 2 classes, one for law enforcement, one for civilians, hope to do. So hopefully that will be part of what his plan is for those officers to do additional training.
And Mayor Coleman also called for more mental health services to be available for people who are having a difficult time processing what happened in Taft and at the St. Francis campus, and encouraged law enforcement officers who really see some terrible things when they respond to these types of emergencies to also be willing to get mental health counseling if they need it, because he says it makes a difference and can really help both communities.
And we don't want to talk about what happened yesterday without at least saying the names of the victims, so we want to remind you who those victims were that were shot and killed yesterday. Dr. Stephanie Huson, who was in an exam room with a patient at the time, William Love, who was a patient, Amanda Glenn, who was the receptionist, and Dr. Preston Phillips. We did talk to a man today who was in the examining room with Stephanie Huson when they heard the shots outside the examining room. She said to him, "Go run and call 911," and he did, and then only found out later that she had passed away and didn't make it. So we're going to have much more on each victim's life tonight during our later newscast, as well as talk to some of these victims who came face to face with that gunman and then survived, and will tell their stories as well.
Much more team coverage ahead later on our newscast starting at 4 o'clock.
I was cold, I got on the plane, and then it was warm.
You could have spent 3 nights on a tropical island getaway to the Sundown Beach Resort and Spa. You would have marveled at the panoramic views of the